On this episode of Audiobook Club,
Steve and I dive into award-winning author Patrick Radden Keefe for the very first time.
it's Steve.
And it's Bobbie.
And you're very welcome along to Audiobook Club. Once again, it's the podcast that fact-checks your dinner party small talk about London property. Now, this week's book, another turn of direction from last week, where we talked about Elsie Drake and her letters of 104 years old. And we're going into what is actually a very true story in London and just blows the cover off a lot of crime and a mysterious death. So a real about turn here. And Bobbie, you really got into this book. It's London Falling.
Yeah, as opposed to London Calling. Yeah,
as opposed to London Calling. London's Burning, of course.
It's definitely London Falling. Author is Patrick Radden Keefe. Now, you and I haven't read him before, have we?
No, first time.
It's also narrated by him as well. It is the author's voice. Released back in April in 2026. It is a whopping 12 hours and 59 minutes long, and it's published by Picador.
Okay, so he's written a few books in the past, and we'll go into the author's history in just a second. But so we're getting into true crime now, and it's really. I love a real true crime, podcast. Certainly, I love a true crime podcast. I love sort of actuality and that kind of thing, and the intrigue. And obviously, it's massive on TV. Of course, true crime. Everyone loves true crime. How are you in true crime?
Oh. It's absolute heaven. Having said that, there's a real difference between good true crime and a pretty pithy, you know what I mean, audio book or audio podcast. So there's some fabulous ones out there. And I would say that it's a really tragic, terrible story about a family. But if you pull back and get the big picture, you're going to get an absolute shock of kind of what we all maybe don't see. You walk around London, don't you, as a Londoner, or even any city, just going about your daily business, and the underbelly that you don't see. And actually, I would say the underbelly is now actually in plain sight. And I think the main thing from this book is how aware I am of how the world has changed, or how my world in London has changed. So There you go.
Not just physically and geographically, but I remember being given a talk by the Met Police about fake text messages, and how you must never, by the way, here's some learning, don't ever click on a link from a text message if it's unexpected. One tap on a text message just led to an hour-long story about it's like a small ship bobbing on the sea, but underneath it's submarines and it's nuclear vessels and torpedoes and everything, all the true crime that was going on underneath, just to do with that fake text message asking for your details or personal information or money or whatever it might be. And it's the stuff that you're absolutely right, stuff that you don't see. That's why I love Sherlock. That's why I really loved the TV adaptation of Sherlock that Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss did, because there's so many lines in there about, from Sherlock about the underground network and his homeless network that he got information from. It's all the stuff that you don't see there, and then this sort of really plays into it. I should, just before we go into our 3-step process, just to let you know, next week's book could be one of two. I'll hold your thought there. We'll come to that towards the end, but let's go into our 3-step process then. And if you are a first timer with us on Audiobook Club, we talk about the author first of all, so Patrick Radden Keefe in this case. Then we're going to talk about the book. So is his latest book. It's really up there in the top 10, but we'll give you our audiobook review of that. Was it a good book to start off with? And then the audiobook production itself, did it bring anything extra and made it special because it was an audiobook? So it's the performance in this case by the author, which is a debate that Matt and I regularly have, by the way. So it'd be great to have this with you a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Patrick Radden Keefe. So how did you find him? And give us all his gen.
Well, I'm ashamed that I haven't read him before or heard him, but I have seen his work that's then been transferred to screen. So He's an American writer. He's an investigative journalist. He is the author of 6 books, first published in 2005. But he's also written extensively for like the New Yorker and Slate and the New York Times magazine. So this is his world. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about his academic credentials, because this is a man who has a BA in history, a MPhil in international relations, an MSc in Media and Information Systems from the London School of Economics. He has a JD degree from Yale Law School, and he passed the bar back in 2005. And the reason why that's important, if we're looking at authorship and integrity of the investigation, you can see you've got someone that is aware of process and maybe historical process. And this becomes really, really important later on when he's examining a lot of the kind of evidence. So I just wanted to put that out. Also, just in case, if you want to kind of back up of who he is, he wrote the book Empire of Pain, which is the non-fiction account of the Sackler family. You know, the dynasty behind the Purdue farmer, the family who built the multi-million-dollar fortune through the aggressive and deceptive marketing of the highly addictive painkiller Oxycontin.
Oh,
that
wow.
was Patrick Radden Keefe who wrote that as a book, and then that got turned into the TV drama and documentary. So that's who we're dealing with. He knows how to do his work. He knows how to tell a story from every point of view. And also, these are really important stories. And I think you and I, we kind of go, oh, yeah, we don't generally do fiction, you and I, unless it takes us on a journey that we really want to go on. So for you and I, this is absolute heaven, isn't it? Because this is written documentary and a heartbreaking story. So that's
dramatic as well, isn't it? You know, it sounds like he really brings the characters to life in the same way. And we will come on to Ben McIntyre later on in the year because he's got a new one out. But Ben McIntyre sounds like you got further in the book than I did, but
you
Ben
take
McIntyre
on the
feels like a
blurb.
similar thing. Yeah,
Because
I'll take on the blurb. So what's the book about?
Yeah.
I'll be learning together. Okay, so this is London Falling. It's a riveting blend of true crime, social history, and investigative journalism, written and read by one of the most decorated non-fiction authors working today, Patrick Radden Keefe. From the Bailey Gifford Prize-winning and Sunday Times best-selling author of Empire of Pain and Say Nothing comes the riveting story of wealth, violence, and deceit at the heart of a glittering city. In 2019, a London teenager, Zach Bretler, fell to his death from a luxury apartment building on the banks of the Thames. On a desperate quest to understand how their son died, his grieving parents made a terrible discovery. Zach had been leading a fantasy life, posing as the son of a wealthy Russian oligarch. Patrick Radden Keefe follows Zach's parents on a dark journey to find out what brought him to the balcony that night and how a teenager's life of make-believe drew him into the city's terrifying underworld. I mean, this really this just sounds so immense and dense, and it's the sort of kind of crime drama that you would really love, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. It's a thriller. It's a page turner. I would say about the start of this book, it focuses on really the family straight away, and you've got a family of 4, mum, dad, 2 boys, and Zach, who is the focus of the story, is the one that lost his life, is the younger boy. Now, I can't say his parents weren't already worried about him. There were little things that kind of alarmed them. But it's really, I think what really comes into focus is you could very quickly go, well, surely it's the parents' fault, or it's this fault, or it's their fault. And I think standing back from this, once you've read the book, you sit there and go, for the grace of God, go I. How do you protect your children from, this kind of, it's so almost random and unbelievable. But for those parents, what happened is they had 2 boys. One of them got into an incredibly academically high school. For people, it's not just money. Your academic rigor had to be really good. So the oldest son got in, not a problem. The youngest son didn't, and they applied again. And the reason why this is important is this might have played into why he ended up kind of fantasies, because he didn't get in like his brother did. And then he ended up at Mill Hill. Now, Mill Hill is another private school, which was almost taken over by, you could get in there easier. I'm not going to say if money paid your way, but the academic rigor was less. But it was full of incredibly wealthy children, and this played a massive part. So what the parents started to notice is how discontented Zach was with his family setup. Now, they were perfectly, from my point of view and from my life experience, they lived in London. They had a flat in London that they owned. And we all know how expensive London is. You can't compare it with the rest of the country. So if you own a flat in London and your parents have reasonably good jobs, your mum doesn't have to work. She works in art. She kind of writes the odd book, but she doesn't have to work. So she's there at home for her children. So you kind of think everything is there for the perfect family. And actually, when you stand back and look at those boys, they're both in really, really good schools, great education compared to a lot of the country. So what starts to happen is he starts to become dissatisfied with what his parents' car they drive. He starts suggesting that they buy a bit better house, a bigger house. And they're kind of looking at their kid going, what's happening to you? They're not happy with how he's turned out. But this escalates. Anyway, the oldest boy goes off to university and leaves. Now, Zach, he sets off on a different path and he sees himself as a bit of an entrepreneur. Now, at one time, he's still living at home. He tells his parents, look, I'm doing really well. I've got all these business deals going on. And his dad says, hold on a second. Look, what have you actually got going on? And he says, look at my bank account, Dad. Look, I've got 850,000 pounds. And his dad says, hold on a second. Can you just explain how you've got that money and why is this in your bank account and just how are these income streams created? So there's this huge story about this family kind of going, hold on a second, something's going on. So the alarm bells are ringing, but they're not ringing loud enough and in the right places, because how does any parent understand the fact that they'll get a message from him and then he goes missing? 4 days later, they go to the police, they report him missing. 4 days later, they get a knock at the door because another police force has found a body of a young man. And it's on the banks of the Thames. And eventually they realise that the John Doe, the man they found who hasn't got any identity on him, actually ties in with Zach, who went missing 4 days before. So there is this fallout of when the family realise that he's missing, and then he's obviously, they're told, fallen to his death from a very exclusive, expensive block of flats. So then there is the police investigation, right? So that's the story. That's the story. Except that's the tip of the iceberg.
Well, of course, it was really interesting to me, the picture that was painted of the state of London. You got quite a long, in the prologue of the book, you got quite a long sort of social and financial history of London, the moving out of the docks, the docks closing down very, very suddenly because of larger container ships being built, which led on to the whole of London being then opened up and becoming gentrified around Canary Wharf, becoming a financial centre, and then lots of wealthy people coming in there, Russian oligarchs buying up, and other people, by the way, and they still do this, very wealthy people buying up very expensive flats in Chelsea or wherever it might be and leaving them dormant, and then seeing that whole sort of empty building just becoming what they call ghost mansions.
I was about to say the ghost mansions that started to emerge. And it's funny, isn't it? About you and I are both Londoners. We know this city. And I remember what you do is you feel a change, but you don't know what's causing it. You don't know where the energy is coming from, but it's definitely different than what it was. So from this story about a family that just had this devastating news and their unusual son, and then you get this history of London, social history of London. You get a history of crime in London. What I just wanted to jump forward to, because this is just standing, the kind of sharp focus of the family, but then this kind of big picture of each of those kind of stories then teaching us of another element that's going to come back into sharp focus, because I think this book is like a spider map. When you get something at the center, which is a family, and then there are all these tangents going off these stories. So you do have to be patient with the amount of information about, like, the two men that Zach spent his last days with. Who were they? So those investigations are incredibly lengthy about who those people were. So that's what the author does. He takes you down a road that you kind of go, hold on a second, is this still relatable? And it's important to stay with it because it's absolutely terrifying with what this 19-year-old boy was involved with, which we still don't exactly know. But he was spending time with a couple of guys that you just kind of go, how did my son ever meet them? And the reason why, just going back to the boy, is what they realised is the boy lived a fantasy life. So basically, he was telling people that he was the son of a rich Russian oligarch. So because that was his fantasy, so that was the fantasy life. So his parents were just dumbfounded, and the brother going, hold on a second, why would he be telling that? And then there's the explanation of what he was doing with that fantasy life and what he was trying to do. And I think what's standing back, what you've got is a very unhappy boy, influenced by this huge amount of money coming into London. His fellow schoolmates, incredibly rich, entitled children, not of kind of, I just suppose, British money. This is huge Russian money that's coming in and money from other countries. So he obviously felt either intimidated, not good enough, because for a 13-year-old boy to tell his mum and dad, look, you need to go and get a bigger car and a bigger house, and I can't possibly be seen in your Mazda. I mean, that's a 13-year-old. That's a lot of damage done to a 13-year-old at school, I think. I mean, how do you account for that?
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's an analogy there, and obviously it's a different thing because it feels like there were real people obviously involved in this. These influences on Zach, but this sounds just such a familiar story about the challenges that parents today have with online influencing, and how these impressionable minds are extraordinarily influenced by sometimes the sewer that is social media. There's I know this is an area that I looked into another part of my life. It is cyber crime and cyber security and all the rest of it, and keeping your kids safe online is a terribly massive challenge to make sure that their screen time is being is healthy, and what they're seeing is healthy for them. By the way, as an aside, Cyberlight Books, by the way, this is a couple of authors who are amazing. They brought out these books that you can read with your kids about how to stay safe online. And so just a complete aside there. Sorry for the bashing of the microphone if that came out.
Sorry.
But thank you. You're very forgiving.
What the other thing about this book? So we've got the sharp focus of the family, the revelations of their son, which is like you just open mouth when you're listening to this. How can that be? Also, how would I feel as a parent? These parents have done nothing wrong. They've just got their two children into the best schools they can for the best education. They're different, but also they're different kids as well. So but something has really affected him that's flipped him. You think it's devoid of all parental, intervention, because he's 13 years old and he's already decided, no, the life I have with my parents is not the life I want. Just bring it into actually also just about this book, about that big focus of crime and social history, London history. I did a kind of little list of the things that come into this story that you would never expect. Because you think about this family, you think about a couple of guys that may be guilty of his demise, but the political landscape comes in. We've also got the expulsion of the agents from Uganda in 1972. That features. You've got the political landscape of Maggie Thatcher coming into power. You've also got the Brinksmack gold heist coming in. You've also got things like Annabelle's nightclub. You've got the Spearmint Rhino Club. You've got the Mermaid Theatre. The Mermaid Theatre story is absolutely mind-boggling. So
for those who don't know about the Mermaid Theatre story,
yes.
Well, can you briefly just outline what that was?
So one of the men that's implicated in his death or questioned on suspecting the cause of death, which he wasn't, by the way, is part of a family that when you go back through their history, you think they are legitimate business family. There's I'm actually not even going to remember their names because I wouldn't mention their names, but they're what you think is they're a legitimate business. They're a crime family. And the Mermaid Theatre is obviously, they're not genuinely interested in putting on theatre shows. And what they see, this is a property deal. So they see a note in the lease that if the theatre goes dark for 2 years, they can change the use of. Okay. Now, to get to that point, they don't put on any theatre shows themselves in the Mermaid Theatre. They get other theatre companies to come in. And there's always a box office split, but there's also technical staff to pay, so no one gets paid. The checks always bounce. The Mermaid Theatre can't even buy toilet roll, or the lighting department can't buy the bulbs. So, and also all the theatre companies go in there and they don't get any of their box office takings. So, and you kind of think, well, hold on a second. How does the guy implemented in the death of Zach in 2019, how is this related to the Mermaid Theatre? And that's what the investigation is the guy that's implemented. There's a most amazing list of things that he was involved in. And it's just unbelievable. And so the thing is about that family is going, hold on a second, who is this man? So this is it. When they start doing their own investigations, how did their son get involved with a man like that? Also, here's another thing. That man just kept going bankrupt. So there's a whole lot of business deals inside London. That this is a London story as well, because it's bigger than that. All these other businesses that we might know, we might walk past. I had no idea that all this, I walk down London streets. What's behind that door? Who's in that car? What's happening? And all that is kind of laid out. It does make you look at this city completely differently, and maybe just crime differently. It is so huge. And from the police's point of view, I would say uncontrollable. I think it's terrifying with what they're up against. And I think it's really interesting to see, I suppose, what's happened. Not just Russian money. It's just generally the level of crime. And it's changed. And we're looking at when we talk about the banks disappearing. Well, one of the major problems with banks disappearing is, of course, there used to be quite a lot of hold-ups at banks. And that declined because you can't rob a bank anymore because they just don't exist. You can't rob a bank
anymore. No.
So it's about doing other things. But I'll say the social history involved in this book is also really, really interesting. And if you've never been to London, you'll get an idea of what this city, this capital city, is now, I think, a lot of it. And you'll get this tragedy, this human tragedy, this family, but also you'll get a police investigation and characters that you sit there and go, how did you manage to get away with all this through your life? And the police investigation, it's tricky for that family because I just got to the bit where the family are being read what's happened in the investigation of what's happened. And they're sitting there going, hang on a second, did we not shout loud enough? Were things done properly? Is this right? Is this? And it's really tricky, like any police investigation, even from the police's point of view, we've seen it when they can't do any more than they've done for various reasons. So it's heartbreaking for them. So how do they make peace with a lot of people think that he committed suicide. The family don't. They think there's obviously something untoward going on. There's definitely something untoward gone on before. But it's interesting about the lack of investigation to some of those calls. So I think if you're interested in crime drama, this is an epic crime drama. And it will take you on a thing that you've never even thought of. And I don't even actually, it's stranger than fiction. That's what it is. Because I don't think you could write this because everyone would think, it's unbelievable. And it's a perfect story for our author. And because he always looks for really interesting, not just any story, it has to be a story that he really wants to tell. And the time he takes to do the investigations is really important. So, phew.
Wow. Are we okay to go out into the streets at night? Can you just reassure everybody?
Well,
I don't think we are.
It's the thing is about this is we're all so naive. If you don't walk in that world, I'm sure it's absolutely fine. Like, I used to live in Berwick Street in Soho, and I always used to say, jokingly, the murders stop at 4 and the market starts at 5. right? You get an hour of quiet. And I don't mean that lightly either. It's
No.
Like any city. Having said that, I used to feel really safe in London. I still do. It's not about crime on the street. I'm not talking about that. I'm not saying there isn't any. It's about crime beyond our knowledge.
Yes.
Completely beyond our experience, but also even our knowledge. And just how do you deal with that if you're a police force? Because there is a question for them as well. I have, all the sympathy for everybody in this, the family, the police forces. It's a huge city to kind of police.
Well, read by Patrick Radden Keefe himself, and it's not for the first time either. So he's read a couple of his books. Now, I can see, we both written down in our various notes on the script here, basically the same question. So Patrick Radden Keefe is American. This is a very British story.
Yeah.
There's two questions I've got for you. One is a raging debate that Matt and I always have.
Yeah.
Which is, should the author read their own book? Would it have been actually more powerful to have been performed by somebody else? He's read a few of these. He's read Empire of Pain, he read Rogues, and he's read Chatter in 2005 as well. Empire of Pain was set in the US, so that's American US story. Rogues is a bit more global, and Chatter is again sort of quite a UK sort of influenced book. But first of all, what's your view on the author reading their own book?
If it fits. I mean, it doesn't always fit, but I think in this case it does. Does it matter that he's American on a very, very English story? There's only a couple of things that sticks out, and that's language, as in route becomes route. That's the only kind of tiny thing that sticks out with me. Also, he was at uni here, so he's walked the streets of London. He knows those places. So I think that sense of place he does really well. You never feel like he's reading a script. And because he's done the investigations, I wonder, all the emphasis is in the right place because he's lived it. This is his work. So because he's got a great voice as well. So I have no problem with him as a narrator generally. He's got a great voice. The fact that it's American voice, I don't have a problem. I actually don't have a problem with it. Could it be done better with an English voice? Maybe, but it doesn't take anything away, I think. I'm
so
perfectly happy with it.
It's kind of negated, like it's negated by, because it's his investigation. He's lived this experience of this investigation and the research and all the rest of it. So that actually does place, when he's saying his words, it places much more gravitas, much more emphasis on them, maybe. And
the connection with the family, because that's what he does really well, I think. Because it's one of those things, you'll always get someone that criticises them. That's their fault. They should have noticed this. I don't know how anyone could have noticed the ridiculousness and absurdness of the situation that their son was playing with, because I don't think he knew. I don't think I think, you've got a fantasist, you've got all sorts of reasons for it, which do come up later in the book. But I don't know how that amazing family have actually managed to keep going. They both cope with it in different ways. And they've got a son. Of course, you've got a mum, you've got a brother, and you've got the rest of the extended family. How do they deal with this? In some ways, it's ridiculous, but it's their ridiculous story about their son that's no longer here. So what I was going to say as well with that is Patrick's relationship with the family and how he's written about it. I think that's really important when he talks about it. So you get that emotional connection with them. And I don't know if someone was just reading it, whether that would come over as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Interesting point, isn't it? It's overall it's an outlandish story, isn't it? It's almost unbelievable this whole story, but at the very center of it is real human emotion. Parents lose their son and want to find out why, and that's extraordinarily heartbreaking, isn't it? When you sort of you read about the Madeleine McCann story from years ago now. Where is their daughter? What happened there? And the parents obviously being pulled into the police station as part of the investigation and all the rest of it, and she still hasn't been found.
It's worth putting the timing of this death as well was 2009 to 2019. By March, we were in COVID times. So you've also got to think is to be fair to the police, was that investigation hampered by a very unique time? How does that work? How does that impact an investigation? Because it must have done, because it impacted everything. So that comes into play. If you like a crime story, well, this is a crime story in COVID times, and we know during COVID times there were many things that happened that wouldn't normally have happened in real life. So you've got to take that into account, and you've got to take into account this is if you have children and you want them to go to a good school and you want them to have a healthy environment around them, and you think by paying for it, you get your children, I suppose, to rub along with future influential people. Okay. But you've got to decide on whether the influence is healthy, because you want to one of the best schools. And that doesn't guarantee great influences, does it? So that's for all of us to make a decision on if you could buy it, would you still buy that education? Yeah.
I mean, there are some perfectly great state schools out there, and I'm sure we both went to one of them. So therefore, you don't necessarily have to pay for it.
You did, yeah. But what I'm saying is that's the thing, isn't it? For parents, you assume you've ticked every single box. You know, you've got a great family. You're together. There are no negatives. But even with no negatives, this is one of the most absurd, ridiculous, heartbreaking stories that I've ever known. I mean, all love to the family. I mean, that's it.
And what sort of circumstances now with our new section of when's best to read this book or listen to this book?
Well, the thing is, it is incredibly dense with information. I mean, he has been criticised a little bit with this book because the first section of the book is a real page-turner thriller. And then it kind of slows a little bit, and then you get the really dense information about the people involved, and you go through their backstories. And and also there's a part of you that just wants to get on with the story. So, but it can't work any other way, because you need all the details, because the details come later. So you're just going to have to, what's the word? You're just going to have to sit those out. And I think if you've got a commute every day, I think this is a book that can last you 3 weeks if you really take your time, because there's a lot of detail in it that's worth it. There's a lot of social history that's fascinating, that's really worth it and really worth kind of thinking about. So it's definitely for a commute over the next 3 weeks. If you've got a long drive, you know, if you're a delivery driver and you've got to go to Scotland and back, then this is brilliant. You will be so immersed in this. You'll be, I don't know, I always think those, if you do a constant listen over 2 or 3 days. I've got a friend and he's a delivery driver, and he often says, listen, we share audiobooks because he's off to Scotland and he's back to London. So I say, okay, you need this one. So we share the best ones. And I'm going to say, okay, when have you got your next Scotland trip? Because this'll do you. This will do, I don't know, 3,000 miles for you.
It feels like the sort of book that if you lost the thread for 30 seconds, you could potentially lose everything. You need to maybe, did you find yourself having to sort of rewind 10 seconds, 20 seconds to sort of re-listen to anything at all in the density? Every
word is gold. He wastes nothing. So nothing is, no line or sentence is puffery. It's like rye bread. Everything is goodness of information. So don't miss it. Because it might come up later on, which you go, as I said, it's fascinating the amount of social history that's in this book that you would never think. You're going to go, hold on a second. What do you mean? We're now on the Briggs Gold. Why are we on this? And the link is fascinating. That's why I said it's stranger than fiction. You could not make it up, Stevie P.
Wow. Okay. Well, We'll leave it there. We can see why it's obviously clearly in the charts and staying there, and it's one of the summer reads that's been recommended as well in various newspapers as well, isn't it, Bob? That is London Falling by and read by Patrick Radden Keefe. Came out 7th of April this year, 2026. 12 hours 59 minutes, so basically 13 hours from Picador. So next week, we mentioned at the start of the podcast that it could be one of two books. And we did ask our listener last week, if I can invoke a little Wogan there for a moment, was to recommend us a book. And we had a recommendation.
Yeah,
and it was a travel book, and it's something you wanted to do as well, because you wanted to do a travel book as well. So would you like to announce next week's book?
It is
And I'll
called...
tell you what might happen.
Okay, it started with a van, and it's by Andy Stocks and Claire Stocks. Now, I'm assuming they're husband and wife. They might be brother and sister. Who knows? It's released on the 16th of July, so it's not out yet. That's 2026. It is 6 hours and 49 minutes long. It's by the Little Brown Book Club, and it's about, I love this. This is so good. What do you do when your car breaks down during a pandemic? Nobody's going to fix it. And you end up buying a carpenter's van. So the title is It Started With a Van. And of course, it's a book after my own heart. I'm just going to love this. But also, I am sure it's one of those things about lockdown. How many times do we sit there and go, okay, I can't do any of the things I normally would do. I'm going to have to do something different. And I like triumph over adversity. So I think this is their triumph over adversity story, which is...
If it literally is a triumph, then they're going to be in trouble, aren't they? Because they haven't made those cars for years.
Listen, I love a Dolomite.
We had a Toledo. That was my first car. I remember a Triumph Toledo.
Toledo.
Blue.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Followed by a Vauxhall Nova.
What was your first car?
My first car?
Yeah.
We bought my first car together, Bobbie.
Was that your very first car?
That was my very first car. So Bobbie and I went to a car auction.
North London.
Never been to one of those before, but it was literally, like they say, literally what you watch cattle going through Clarkson's farm and the auctioneer just talking very, very fast. And you teeing me up saying, you've got to be ready, Steve, got to be ready. And then this sparkling Renault Clio turned up. And it can't be sold as seen, by the way. There's a little tip. That's what you told me as well. And then you and I bought out my first car, Bob.
There you go. Well, it was actually a fleet auction, and it did have no major mechanical faults stamped on it, and it did have a full service history. What it didn't have, and I remember you had to leave it there because it didn't yet have an MOT or a spare wheel, so you had to go back for it. There you go. Anyway, that's a car story for another time. Anyway,
that's it. I mean, they were big laughs that day in Enfield there, but thanks again for coming. That was literally about 25 years ago now. So that is one book. Now, potentially, we could be doing a different book, and this is the much vaunted A Very Dangerous Pursuit by and read by Ben Miller, which we trailed when we did the Magic Faraway Tree with Matt, because Matt might be back. So it could be It Started With a Van or A Very Dangerous Pursuit by Ben Miller. Now, we will do both. Absolutely promise you that. But Matt could be back next week, which will be amazing. Yay! Because he's not been entirely on tip-top form on the health front. So
you know what? That's what he tells us. It has been also 4 weeks of hot, sunny weather. So I think he's just been in his garden. That's what I think. Hasn't he?
Yeah, listen to
Let's see how sun-kissed he is when he comes back, shall we? Should do the test.
Yeah, absolutely right. If I see you covered in sun kisses, I'll say to him, Anyway, so that's the choice of two. It could be It Started With a Van or A Very Dangerous Pursuit. Two entirely different kind of stories, but I guess actually kind of linked, because we don't know what It Started With a Van could have ended up as A Very Dangerous Pursuit. We shall find out. It's released on the 16th of July. Now then, if you are listening to those books, so as we record this on the 2nd of July, Started With a Van, as you mentioned, Bob, isn't quite out yet. So send us your thoughts on that when it's downloaded, because we'll include them in the show. And also A Very Dangerous Pursuit as well. That came out towards the end of May. But we will do both, but not necessarily in the order we think they do. We're just kind of taking a check on whether Matt's going to come back next week. So that's it. There we go. Wow, Bob, thank you for taking the lead on this book, because we've been doing a lot of recording, and I've been slaving over a hot editing suite, getting the podcast out. So you've really got yourself into this book, but it sounds absolutely amazing. The sort of thing I would absolutely love as well.
It's a pleasure. Anytime.
Good. We'll see you again next week. We are available wherever you get your podcasts. We are Audiobook Show on Instagram and Blue Sky. If you want to get in touch with any of us individually, Whinging Pom is Matt. Real Bobbie Pryor is Bobbie, of course. Clues in the name. Matt's just given himself a nickname. And I am Steve Audiobooks. That's a new one I've set up because it wasn't really vibing with audiobooks, my Instagram. So there we go. That's us on Instagram. We are on YouTube. You can watch these episodes at Audiobook Club 1540 is our inexplicably called channel, and all our episodes are available on audiobookclub.net. And we will see you next week for either a journey in a van or a pursuit up a set of stairs with Ben Miller. Thanks, Bobbie.
Next week.
Being outside is good for us. It's that simple. And trails make it easy for us to walk, bike, and be active outside in our own backyards. On the trail, we see people moving, connecting with their communities, making the places where they live great. For 40 years, Rails to Trails Conservancy has led the way, creating trails across the country, making it safer and easier for everyone to get outside. They want you to get involved. Find your trail and start your journey today at railstotrails.org/iHeart and follow at Rails to Trails on social.